This is I want to return here. This is an excerpt from a new book that's coming out that I want to dive into with you guys. I have not read this yet. I've been aware of this book coming out for some time, and my number one question with it is, what the fuck is this about? And I'm hoping that, with Matt and Virgil on my side here, we can parse the meaning of this.
Gabo is coming.
We can get to the bottom of this. I'm talking, of course, about our good.
Let's put on our detective caps.
It's our good friend Matt Yglesias, who has a new book out. He has a new book out called 1 Billion Americans, The Case for Thinking Bigger. And there is an excerpt of this in New York Magazine. We're not thinking big enough. We need one. Yeah.
1 billion? That's too many. What are you talking about?
So
is 1 billion not big enough? Should I be thinking bigger than a billion?
1 trillion Americans.
I could barely conceive of a billion. I don't think it's actually possible for a human being to fully imagine a billion of something.
Guys, I got to tell you, I don't think there are enough chicken tenders hypothetically possible on this planet to feed 1 billion Americans.
So this is an excerpt of Maddie's new book, 1 Billion Americans, that was written in New York Magazine last week. And like I said, I have only glanced at this because it just when I started to start reading it, I felt like, a robot that had been put in some sort of logic loop.
It sounds like he wrote this book after getting into a long late night Twitter feud with a third world Maoist, and now he's just upping the ante on the other side, saying, "Oh, you want a dictatorship of the third world proletariat in the United States? Well, guess what? I think there should be 1 billion Americans, motherfucker." Fuck you.
I mean, I think it's the funny thing about Matt is that Matty is that he's worn a lot of hats. In the various books he's published, he's donned the garb of an expert in a number of different topics, and Matt, I think you're right that this book is sort of an attempt to synthesize all of those sort of wonkish enthusiasms that he takes up as hobbies to Reddit. He was a defense policy expert for a while, then he was a housing expert for a while. He started out as a business and fucking markets guy for Slate or whatever. This new book,
it's like that old Daily Show joke where all the correspondents, when they would do a correspondence segment that was like a talking head segment, they would get a fake expert title, and it was always different every time.
Yeah, like senior cephalopod analysis or whatever.
Yeah, right. By the way, Chris, when does this episode come out?
Like every episode we ever do the same day that we record it.
Like what time?
I don't know, like 9.
Okay, then this isn't relevant.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know. Maybe Bill and Ted is on Sci-Fi right now, but this information isn't going to be useful to the listener.
Virgil, say that shit for your OnlyFans, please. If you want to tell people on your OnlyFans what is on the TV that you're looking at the moment that you're typing it, then keep that shit there.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Fine.
All right. We're talking about the case for adding 672 million more Americans by Matthew Yglesias. Like I said, I have not read this yet. I don't get it, and I'm hoping I need your guys' help here. What to make of this? What point is he like? What's going on here? So I'm just going to start reading here. The United States is not full. In fact, it is empty. Right now, the country has about 93 people per square mile. Many countries are far denser than this, and not just city-states like Singapore or small island nations like Malta. South Korea has 1,337 people per square mile, and Belgium has 976. If you tripled the population of the United States, adding new Americans only to the lower 48 and leaving Alaska and Hawaii intact and unchanged, the main part of America would be only about as dense as France and less than half as dense as Germany. A transformation on that scale is almost impossible to imagine, in large part because of the American political system has fallen into a state of torpor and dysfunction driven by, among other things, the absence of the shared sense of purpose that once bound the national experiment. But while contemporary politics is terrifying in certain ways, it has also opened up again the possibility of goals and projects and ideas. Probably the biggest opportunity in a generation for new ideas to take hold. So here is one big one: 1 billion Americans.
And this gives us a new shared sense of purpose.
Well,
because he wants the Rocky Mountains to be as densely populated as Queens.
I think he's sort of trying to give like a nationalist gloss to like his sort of YIMBY urbanist sort of like his whole thing is like he's really into zoning laws, and he wants more high density like zoning to be available in cities like San
Jesus
Francisco
Christ.
and elsewhere, because he's just like that's what's causing homelessness or whatever. But like I think he's trying to give a kind of like a grand national purpose or something like, and then some sort of mission that will compete with I think what he imagines is the coming blood and soil nationalism of white man's America and fuck everyone else. But let's see where else he goes with this. When America faced down Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, we were the big dog. We had more people, more wealth, and more industrial capacity. But against China, we are the little dog. There are more than 1 billion of them and about 330 million of us. Chinese people don't need to become as rich as Americans for China's overall economy to outweigh ours. If they manage to become about half as rich as we are on a per person basis, like the Bahamas or Spain, then their economy would be far larger than ours in the aggregate.
The Earth would also be non-existent. It would be Venus. That's going to happen, right? If like you're assuming that we're just going to be competing with each other like along the current consumption matrix with China and India, that there's no planet.
So I think this is his hook here for like, how do I get sort of like YIMBY zoning deregulation fascination? How do I give that into like a grand national context? And I think the answer is China has more people than America. Therefore, if every Chinese person fought every American person, they would win. If there were a big rumble between America and China, I mean, like once our A team gets taken out, they've got hundreds of millions more to go.
That did happen in India earlier this year. That giant rumble in the mountains.
Oh, right,
between the Indian and the Chinese army, where they were all using rebar and shit on each other, and they were just tumbling off into the abyss. I like to see it. That's for sure.
This is even more shame. Jesus, you're just imagining the India-China clash as like a fucking Jet Li movie. This is more shameless and frankly more dumb than the idea of a missile gap. We have a people gap with China.
And that, it won't take the average Chinese person getting that much more wealthy to have their own domestic consumer market and then, recall all our debt and fucking sink this fucking country. So,
I mean, that's that in the long term, if conditions maintaining themselves, like right now, China needs us because we supply the market for their stuff. If they were able to create a fully sustained internal domestic consumer economy, we would not be as necessary, and our position to them vis-a-vis, global geopolitics would be way reduced. But that ignores two things. One, our military, and two, that the Earth would be a fucking cinder if that happened. Talking about this shit like this and just assuming away the reality of the fucking scarcity that we're and the environmental feedback loop that we're in right now. It just shows these guys are, because it seems so huge and because the solutions are not small bore. We can't fucking zone our way out of the climate crisis. They just cling to, I'm going to get something that's equally bold and conversation starting, but just assumes away the fundamental political and ecological constraint we're currently challenged with.
It goes here. Conservatives argue that the country can't take more immigrants, that it should effectively close its borders or at the very least restrict immigration to a trickle. Progressives tend to disagree, even while being inclined to say that the particular towns and cities they live in should be preserved as is, opposing any further real estate development as pernicious disruption. Meanwhile, America's birth rate has slipped to a historic low, and nobody in the political mainstream seems to think we can or should do anything about it. But a 3-to-1 advantage in population is really hard to overcome. Thankfully, tripling the size of the nation is something that is in our power to achieve. It would just require more immigrants and more programs to support people who want to have additional children. Of course, if we had a lot more people, we'd need to adjust a number of other things to make sure they had jobs and places to live.
Sure. Might want to get on that.
Okay. Housing shortages are common in many parts of the country, but the tools to surmount them are easily available. And
here's the switch. Okay.
And like immigration would cost taxpayers nothing. providing adequate leave for America's families by offering not just paid leave, but financial assistance, preschool and aftercare services, reasonable summer programming, and affordable college for all qualified
we should
students
do that. That
would
sounds
cost
good. We
money,
should do all that
but
stuff.
it would greatly benefit America's children and make it much easier for middle class people to have the number of kids they say they want. Well, why don't we just do those things and just like not try to triple our population while we're doing it? I mean, it just seems to me like he's advocating for like, it should be easier for people to form families and we should have like a less restrictive immigration policy. What's this shit about how we need 672 million more people?
Because the reasoning, the argument for these other things is that we should not have an economy that is entirely dominated by fucking profit and by exploitation, and that it deforms and demeans human life to the extent that people literally don't want to continue, and they don't feel that they can continue the cycle of human reproduction because they don't have the social infrastructure to allow it to thrive. And the answers to those those answers aren't answers Yglesias wants, so he needs to give it some sort of gloss that is as titanic as like the question of challenging capitalism, but is not as like endangering of the fundamentals that he cherishes. So it's got to be turned into a nationalist contest that we can win.
Well, here's another problem that I see with this. Maybe he addresses this later in the article. I don't know, but like he begins by comparing like, hey, like, in terms of people per square mile, like there's almost no one in America. Like, whereas look at Belgium and Spain or whatever. I mean, like, and America is a vastly larger country in terms of space, but like, yeah, like he's right. Most people aren't living in most of the places in this country. And that is a problem that seems to be accelerating because all of the jobs that are fucking like livable are in the cities. Like you have to leave, like small towns are dying because people are leaving them to go to more populated areas. And so it just seems to me like would these 672 new billion or this new billion Americans, like would their population be evenly spread out over the Great Plains and big sky states like Montana or Idaho, or would New York, LA, and Chicago just become like mega city one? Because like that doesn't seem very livable or sustainable to me. If there was like, if New York City had an additional 100 million people living in it.
Also, by the way, turning our agricultural breadbasket into housing also has its own potential downsides to, producing food for humans to eat.
I think we should have people move to where the agriculture is happening. That can't go wrong.
We should empty the cities.
I mean, if he really wants to go like Pol Pot here, I would at least find that interesting, and I would find it more worthy of engagement with than whatever this shit is.
The next sentence is this is the perfect Matt Yglesias sentence here. These challenges may seem complicated, but really they are not.
Oh, cool.
Oh, cool.
The solution to America's new urban housing crisis is to build more houses so more people can move.
Oh my God,
cities.
this guy he's like one of those fucking junkies at the Port Authority, but for upzoning.
The solution,
this is his cock and bull story that he tells you about why he needs the money. Is like, oh, I need like 650 million more Americans.
So like, no, he's saying,
but then he
like,
goes and he spends it on upzoning.
No, but he's saying like that these problems could be solved by just making it so we can build more housing in demand cities. But like this gets to exactly the point I'm talking about. Like this new massive population is not going to be evenly spread over the American continent so that people can live, with a certain modicum of, privacy or open space or whatever. No, what he's saying is that like, look, our population per square mile, if you average it overall, wouldn't have to come up that much to make this possible. But the populations of places like New York or any major urban center would have to increase by 10,000%.
You're forgetting about the programs, though. There'll be more social programs. So we'll create like a nightmare of enemy and social conflict. There'll be programs.
Well, it says here, the solution to the illegal immigration crisis is to let more people come legally. Americans of virtually all stripes may look like a threat to some xenophobic Americans, but they make native-born Americans richer and fuel the kind of innovation that can help the country grow. But America's vast rural hinterland and many of its aging northeastern and midwestern cities need an influx of people to prevent their current priceless assets, i.e. their real estate, from wasting away over the next generation. And America's families need help from a more robust welfare state in order to be able to have and raise children with a secure middle-class lifestyle. For a long time, our politics has treated these patterns as part of a puzzle that don't quite fit together. More immigration is good, but the cities immigrants tend to move to already don't have enough housing. More housing is good, but that might only exacerbate rural depopulation. And if sane, humane child and family policy gives us more people, sane, humane immigration policy also gives us more people. If declining areas need more people, but expensive areas also need more housing, then the solution to the puzzle is that we should just do it all. Okay?
And yeah, I mean, and the people, the citizens who are here are going to do that and say yes to that because they're not going to see this huge influx of immigrants as a threat to them as economic competitors, because we're going to be doing all this other stuff about, what was that, Matt? About, I don't know, making, what exactly does Matt say about making it easier for people to already live in this fucking country without spending every minute of their life on a fucking hamster wheel? That they're not going to see this millions of immigrants is just more people who might take bread out of their mouths? This zero-sum nightmare that we live in? Is he going to do anything about that?
I just searched the article for the word union, and it only appears in the phrase Soviet Union and European Union.
Okay. All right. I got it.
So it says here, admittedly, it sounds a little loopy. But while some left-wing intellectuals might suggest that the end of American hegemony would be desirable, I've never heard an elected official from either party articulate that view. And America should aspire to be the greatest nation on earth. In part, that's because our main rival is not something cuddly like a hypothetical version of the European Union or a non-hierarchical world, but the People's Republic of China.
Nothing cuddlier than the place that's just drowning thousands of people in the Mediterranean on a daily basis at this point.
A country that is aggressively using its commercial clout to try to silence critics abroad, conducting egregious human rights abuses against its Uyghur minority, and cracking down on freedoms in Hong Kong.
What the fuck is being the greatest country in the world mean? Like, we have to, like, that should be, he's basically saying, he's not even saying we need 1 billion Americans. He's saying we need 1 billion Americans as part of the as a subsidiary part of the greater project of being the greatest nation in the world. What does that mean? What does it mean to be the greatest nation in the world?
I mean, it means to be the wealthiest and most powerful nation.
And what kind
of
competitive framework does that assume? And how does that competitive framework jibe with the fact that if we keep competing with each other across national lines, as I keep saying, this world is gone. At least in any recognizable or desirable form that we might want to imagine for the future. That we might want to, I don't know, reproduce enough to have 1 billion people to see. Does he answer any of those questions?
I don't know. I'm gonna skip ahead to the end because he goes on for a long time, and I don't want to fucking. Oh, he does shout out Matt and Elizabeth Brunig's Family Fun Pack and the People's Policy.
It's
Project.
Good policy.
Yeah. So like again, it just seems like he's
he thinks that you're going to get the Family Fun Pack. He thinks he's going to get the Family Fun Pack by telling people we need 1 billion Americans and this is how. He thinks that's the most compelling framework for that because like that's got to be the point of this, right? Why you write a book like that? It's not like it's going to matter in any meaningful sense. No, very few people are going to read it. The hope is that if enough people of influence read it, that it shapes the discourse and it becomes an influential element within like the political strategy of the parties. And so that's why it's relevant. And so when he says we need X, Y, and Z as part of it, like the Family Fun Pack, then he's kind of implicitly saying that this is how you sell that. 1 billion Americans is the best way to tell people that we should have a Family Fun Pack, not we should have a Family Fun Pack because you should be able to raise a fucking family in this country.
But no, we need the Family Fun Pack because China will have an even funner family pack.
Yeah, see, because he has to strip morality out of the entire equation of politics. Otherwise, his entire premise is dog shit and rotten and monstrous. And so it has to be reframed as a utilitarian international relations chess move instead of like the minimum requirement to consider yourself being a fucking society.
And also, what's going unsaid here in this sort of like we need to compete with the 1 billion red Chinese or whatever, is that like he's saying that like we can do that and not suffer any sort of drop in our own quality of life that we've come to expect. Like he's like, oh no, like all that we consider our birthright as Americans will essentially remain untouched. And in fact, it's going to get better if there are 672 million people extra in this country.
You will live in a Fuddruckers. You won't even have to go to one. There will be someone in your kitchen making you Fuddruckers.
I'm picturing a 1960s ad man writing on a whiteboard the word million, crossing out the M, putting a B. And everyone loses their shit.
1 billion Americans. What does it say to you?
Hey, here's what's interesting to me. Obviously this is all just like dumb bullshit. But Matt's writing this out of his YIMBY compulsion. Like this is all his the culmination of his master scheme to upzone neighborhoods, which I don't get. Because I get being a NIMBY, right? It's like I don't want to live next door to the garbage factory. Right.
Yeah.
No shit. Nobody wants to do that. Okay. And I get, having like a socialist minded housing policy, having mass, public housing that's decent and livable. Because one, you probably want to live there yourself, and two, like this is a moral, rational thing to do, to have a collective solution to the problem of homelessness. The YIMBY shit is straight up just, I think my neighborhood should have more tall buildings. Like you walk around, like does Matt walk around fucking Foggy Bottom or where the fuck he lives? And
I think it's DuPont Circle. Not doxing
DuPont.
him. That's a guess.
Yeah, DuPont Circle.
He seems like that type.
Does he walk around and when he sees one of these like hideous fucking, 8-story, gentrifying buildings, like does he just like get a hard on?
Well, no, I think Matty would walk around and he thinks they should be way more than 8 stories because DC does have that idiotic zoning rule that no building can be taller than the Washington Monument, which is largely why it is a hideous, awful city.
I think Virgil, you bang on you have identified here a crucial difference between the liberal and the socialist critique of capitalism. The socialist critique of capitalism is that it is anti-human, is that it is a moral obscenity because it makes us act immorally. Like, I mean, obviously you can say that that's not very ideal. That's not materialistic. I'm talking about the way we express it through politics. The way we express it in our conception of the good is in moral terms. It has to be. You can argue about where those moral terms come from, but it has to be a moral objection. That's the only thing that makes sense. The liberal objection to capitalism is that it's not efficient. And for Matty and for YIMBY types, the problem of homelessness is not a moral obscenity. It is a annoying inefficiency created by outmoded systems of not capitalism, but of like culturally reproduced capitalism that need to be changed and they get to imagine themselves as progressive because those efficiencies that they imagine include things like, hey, maybe there shouldn't be giant encampments of homeless people everywhere because now those people can efficiently contribute to the marketplace instead of having their potential labor power just wasted like that because of our inefficient distribution of housing resources.
I agree that it begins with an interest in efficiency, but I think YIMBYism becomes pathology over time.
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe that comes from just like arguing with people on the internet and being
That's exactly where it comes from. Because if you have to keep reasserting it, you have to keep creating more baroque and delusional justifications for your own belief system, even though it's just the thin reed of self-interest. Like, I would like more pho places in my neighborhood, please. It becomes this titanic representation of not only your own virtue, but human virtue, because you spend all that time arguing with people every other point along it and having to defend it and create mental architecture to defend your idea so that you don't ever confront the basis for it.
I'm saying it also adjusts their sense of pleasure, that they genuinely do feel a certain jouissance when they see some fucking, developer's ugly fucking overpriced building.
Yeah, they get a charge out of it because they've charged it. They've charged it by that, like it's a ritual incantation, and it has charged their yimdiness with that jouissance, with that erotic frisson, because it's part of their political war. And war is a force, folks.
But here's Virgil. I imagine YIMBY people when they see like sort of aerial shots of the island of Manhattan, being like, "This is good." But that giant green thing in the middle of the island, could we have more housing there? Could we just all that land is being not being put to its best use? Can we just fill it all in with buildings? And wouldn't that make everyone's quality of life better?
Let's have in just the middle of a fucking Nebraska cornfield that matchstick building. Just plop it in there like you're playing SimCity with all the fucking you did the cheat to unlock every fucking building.
The arcologies. Actually, we should honestly, what my actual solution to these future crises and population
Arcologies,
issues,
baby.
building arcologies. That's my actual.
Oh, well, that would be cool. I mean, that is actually the culmination of a socialist housing project is something like that.
Archons for arcologies. And that would be entertaining.
I do have another point here. It's Matt thinks that this is effective nationalist pandering. That's cute.
Yeah, it really is funny.
This is
really funny.
it. Like after watching
you're right.
after watching the fucking RNC, the fucking full Starship Troopers reality that we live in, you're like, yeah, this is gonna get the MAGA hat, the fucking patriot rubes on my side.
It's called triangulation.
You're exactly right. And he thinks that this is. This is the way that Democrats and liberals are going to get on board and have a nationalist message that works for them, which just comes down to be like, hey, what if we had as many players as China has? What if we could field a basketball team that was 1 billion strong?
Yeah, it's not the full motivation of the fucking nationalists is not just pure primal libidinal hatred. They're going to be swayed by your bar charts, Matt.
Yeah, because that's what gets him off, though. That's where he's got the category confusion, because he thinks anyone else is going to be persuaded by his clever, intricate, small.
But he thinks he's being clever here. He realizes not everybody gets off on the bar charts and thinks, but a different bar chart must get surely must arouse the other.
All right, I'm gonna finish out this piece. I'm skipping ahead to the last couple of paragraphs here.
Does he still listen to this show?
I hope so.
Yeah. It's customary when trying to talk to Americans. It's customary when trying to talk Americans into daunting political problems to quote JFK on the subject of why go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon, he said. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Because I am hard.
Because I am hard. Because so you can see, it's a great speech. That being said, it's worth emphasizing that while 1 billion Americans may be impossible and absurd, there's actually nothing hard about it. Letting more hardworking and talented foreign-born people move here is not hard. On the contrary, it's keeping people out that's hard. Providing financial support so that Americans can have as many children as they say they'd like to is a big change, but there's nothing particularly difficult about it. Nothing particularly difficult, except it would involve passing legislation that literally no one in our government wants to touch with a fucking 10-foot barge pole.
Yeah, it would
all
involve,
these same people. I'm sorry, don't all these same people, when you talk about Medicare for all, just be like, how are you going to get Manchin to vote for it?
Yep.
Well, how the fuck? How are you going to get around the Senate for this 1 billion American plan?
Well, this is how you get Manchin to read 1 billion Americans.
Oh, okay,
I honestly think that's his deep answer. You get enough of these elites. You get enough of the elites to read this thing, and then they will do the thing. This
becomes the new pedophile symbol that QAnon sees everywhere. Is all these senators walking around with a copy of this book? Yeah. What could 1 billion Americans mean? Why would they want 1 billion Americans? Oh my God!
They're gonna eat them. It's like at McDonald's, what billions served. That's going to be
to serve 1 billion Americans.
To serve 1 billion Americans. But that's because Matthew.
At every international airport when you get off a plane, it's just you see a picture of the president, a picture of the head of Homeland Security, and then it just says America, 1 billion people.
But I think the reason that he thinks that is a viable path forward is because he has this vision as a wonk, as a guy who has spent a time in Washington, of the long history of influential books and articles that have shaped American policy over the years.
Yeah, like the Moynihan Report.
Exactly. And what he doesn't get there, or at least his public presentation of this case requires him to not get this, is that those things are not changing people's minds. What those intellectual essayists are doing is giving politicians a political and intellectual justification for shit they were going to do anyway. And anything in his little fucking wish list that goes against capital is not going to be done, regardless of how many of these people read his fucking book. But if there's something in there that they can do that'll maybe buy off a constituency for a while or convince people that they're actually accomplishing something, while really they're still fucking strip mining everything to the bone and making the flourishing that would be required to have 1 billion people in this country even viable, that's not happening. So his entire model is flawed at its foundation.
Wasn't that literally a line from a Vonnegut story from the one where everyone lives in this like tiny apartment, that the 1 billionth American has been born. Right? That's that story about overcrowding in the future.
Okay.
Like, that was this haunting line is the thesis of this book.
Well, I mean, it's a haunting line because at the end of the day, like even if this plan went according to Maddie's vision, and we had more immigrants and a more generous social welfare state, and free education, and we allowed people the economic freedom to have as many children as they'd like to. At the end of the day, they're just going to turn into Americans. So I don't see this as a net benefit for either this country or the world at this point.
We would have to as Americans have social values beyond consumption. And the thing is, that's not impossible, but that would actually require changing our relationship to each other and to fucking work and to production and to capital and to everything else at a fundamental level that it could not be solved by a national project that ignores all of the root fucking causes of the social alienation that turns us into a herd of self-seeking, id-driven water buffaloes which could not fit on a billion on any planet, any fucking planet, let alone continent.
Here's a really good line. Here's a really good line. Sorry, I just got to get to this one. Letting builders make whatever kind of housing their customers want to buy is easy. He's talking about Grover House now. He wants a billion Grover houses all over America. Anyone who wants to build a house,
I bet you could get Yimbys. You could get Yimbys to defend Grover House. You would absolutely do that. They will fucking convince themselves that this actually looks good and is cool. This rocks. I want this in every fucking city. I would love a dozen Grover houses in my neighborhood.
Shifting economic activity to places where land and buildings are cheap is a little more difficult, but it's hardly a voyage to the moon. Copying settling Americans on the moon is more realistic than this shit.
Question. The moon was a technical question. Once you fucking put the money to it, you just have to figure out how to do it. This is talking about convincing people to do something as a collective project. That's insanely difficult.
This is another really great line. This is another really perfect Yglesias line here. Copying a traffic management paradigm that Singapore implemented in the mid-'70s isn't hard at all.
Heavens to
nor is copying
Murgatroyd.
long-standing German commuter rail practices.
Hey, Singapore, that country that's essentially a dictatorship.
Yeah, it's been run by like one guy for the past 60 years.
Well, he's gone now, but he left. His thing is intact. It's a managed democracy at its technological endpoint.
Okay,
so
he says here,
unless the real answer to this is written in like invisible ink and you have to put it up to flame to read it, and you're one of the Illuminati, and this is actually a text telling you how to create like a totally foreclosed political elite that can rule through sheer technological force, like a biomechanical matrix, then this is not helpful for anybody.
all right, this is a really good paragraph because he does acknowledge some of the problems that 1 billion Americans might cause. So, he says, of
Someone
course,
should do something about all the problems.
of course, tripling the population could also cause a number of problems. Traffic jams could get worse. That's his first problem. That's the
still
first
driving
problem
cars.
you could think
A
of.
billion Americans, and we're still driving around in personal cars.
Wow.
Yeah. No, again, it's a billion Americans, but they're all still driving cars that run on gasoline. That's a fucking great idea. So it says here, traffic could get worse. Rent could go up. Water access would be stretched thinner. There'd be pollution. These are, unfortunately, real concerns. And the exact details of how best to structure family support programs, how best to pay for them, exactly which additional immigrants to let in, and how to... Wait a second.
Which additional immigrants?
He's still talking about which additional immigrants? I thought he just said let everyone in. Or you want a billion people or not? And he's still trying to look at people's resume and shit? What the fuck is going on here?
That's the classic. That's the red lib H1N1 shuffle. Or H1, it's not H1N1 visa, right? What's the one? The H1 visa, the one for like
the
ones that they stocked Silicon Valley with.
Yeah,
it's like you pitch immigration on social justice grounds of saying people should be allowed in this country, but what you end up actually doing is just increasing skilled labor for industries that want cheaper labor. That's it. And then
I just
everyone
love
else
at the
still
end of
gets
this,
the fucking.
he's-
Everyone else still gets to wait in line, and everyone
He's-
else still gets to die in the fucking Mojave.
He's talking about like tripling America's population size, and again, he doesn't give a time frame for this. But I would imagine he'd want to do it sooner rather than later, to compete with China or whatever. And he's still looking at fucking like people's CVs who want to get in the country. Like, what the fuck? What are you talking about?
Also,
why are you
I just
even
had a-
deciding who to let in or not? Why not just let in everyone if this is the end goal that you're going for?
I just had a thought. Matt started out mentioning the population density of the United States. Has he factored into this the fact that in a few years we will literally have less land? That the land is currently eroding. Like entire communities are just we've just given up on entire communities.
Yeah, you might want to
We're just
ballpark.
literally just picking up everyone and just moving them somewhere else.
Yeah, you might want to subtract Florida from the calculations he's got.
Yeah, most of Louisiana, just
So he goes here.
that's not a thing.
So he goes, and how to improve our infrastructure and increase our housing stock are good subjects to argue about.
I
guess
bet.
that's what it comes down to here. That's all Matt wants to talk about. These are the good subjects to argue about. But think about how much healthier our politics would be if there were really a debate about how to accomplish great things rather than a food fight over semi-imagined defenses to real Americans that serve as a mask for an endless procession of tax cuts for the rich. Why not make America greater than ever instead? Okay, I it's like he just says like, okay, yeah, there'd be problems like water for everyone to drink, but he doesn't mention like what are the solutions to them. He just goes back to talking about tinkering with zoning laws. And he goes, yeah, why not make America greater than ever instead? Again, this is the liberal thing. This is they're always fantasizing about the day in which they can compete on the same fucking playing field as the right wing does with all of their fucking flag waving jingoist horseshit.
Another great president, FDR, upzoned the Tennessee Valley.
So it goes here, whatever liberals' misgivings about this national project, America should aspire to be the greatest nation on earth.
Once again, meaningless.
Yeah. That's what Americans already think, and rightly so.
Because
Not rightly so. What the fuck are you talking about? Even if you were we're all roughly the same age as Matt Yglesias. Even just going on our lifetimes alone, what would fucking indicate to you that it's right? Forget the moral judgment aside about whether it's good or not to think that you live in the greatest nation on earth and it should always be that way. What on evidence could you muster to make that case that America, as it's existed over the last 40 or 50 years, is fucking the greatest nation on earth, or has done things that would fucking warrant that title?
Yeah.
On Yglesias' own fucking terms. That's what I'm wondering.
We're not doing great. We're doing pretty bad. We couldn't get people to wear masks to prevent the spread of a fucking deadly infection. We couldn't get people to say, hey, maybe I wouldn't like my grandmother to die. We couldn't get that to happen. And I'm not blaming those people because that's the end point. That ridiculousness is the end result of a whole series of social pathologies, which in my opinion add up to America not being the greatest anything except maybe threat to the fucking future of the human race.
Yeah, that's it. That's what they mean. I think that answers your question, Matt. What does it mean to be the greatest nation on earth? It means to be the single greatest threat to peace, security, and the future of everyone else on the planet.
Because that means you're in charge. It means you're at the top of the totem pole, and you get to order everybody else around. That's what greatest has to mean. I mean, if you're getting it beyond just pure ethereal bullshit, it has to mean that, and that implies a future that doesn't allow for any kind of population war with China or anybody else ending with anything other than total systemic ecological destabilization. And the country that whatever social forms emerge from that are not going to give a shit about Matt Yglesias' fucking restaurant. They're going to plug him into a goddamn Skinner box to keep him rowing an oar.
So it goes here. I'm just finishing out here. This is finishing out this excerpt. It says, rather than being paralyzed by racial panic, eco-pessimism, or paranoia about the loss of parking spaces, we should try to think this stuff through calmly and systematically, choosing to emulate our forefathers and mothers who managed to welcome millions of newcomers and ride ox carts across the Rocky Mountains to build the greatest nation in human history. Rather than throw up our hands at every moderately difficult logistical problem and whine that the country is full. I just love that he's talking about tripling the population of America as a moderately difficult logistical problem.
Yeah, well, there's just hundreds and hundreds of cascading subsidiary problems, all of which are fixed right now in a pathological condition because of the relationship to capitalism that is in a steady collapse of sustainability itself, just on its own terms in terms of its profit rate return. That's going to be okay. That's no problem. We'll do it. And it all starts with Ben Sass reading this book. That's the first domino in that domino meme. The first bat is Ben Sass picks up 1 billion Americans, and then the last one is the billionth American orders his first round of Fundido dip at the fucking Fuddruckers that is on the moon.
Well, like I said, wouldn't just colonizing the moon be a better fucking use of our time than this?
Like
bullshit?
I said,
probably,
if it's any technical question is easier to solve than this shit, than getting people on board with like a broad program like that ran counter to existing like economic conditions.
There's water on the moon.
I think so. Yeah.
There might be other stuff. I don't know. I've never appraised the moon.
Is there freaking cancel culture on the moon?
That'd be great. The moon should just be like Parlor, but for reality.
Yeah.
You can just go to the moon now to like, to say what you want to say and fucking,
Are there Kardashians on the moon?
Oh God, there better
No,
not be any
sign me
freaking
up.
Kardashians.
Well, there you go. I still don't get it. I mean, I just, it was one of the most.
You need to take some. You need to go to the Office of Management and Budget and take some salvia, and then you'll know.
But there you go. That is the case for 1 billion Americans, and I think the underlying point is it's not that hard.
It's fine.
Come on, why not? Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it, guys. Billion Americans. Let's see. Let's go. Let's get it trending.
It's the
Let's get
scene from
hashtag 1 billion Americans.
the scene from Ferris Bueller where he goes to the museum and he's looking at the Surratt, but it's Matt Yglesias at the Congressional Budget Office.
There you go, folks. 1 billion Americans. I mean, just how about 1 billion CHapo fans? That's what
Yeah.
I'm. That's the
Now
world.
that's
I'm
a
trying
goal.
To, that's the
Now
world
that's a
I'm
goal.
trying to
Now we're
build.
talking.
Yeah.